All right, everybody, welcome to Re-Education Camp number 7. My name is Colin Miller, being joined, as always, by the unflappable, the unsinkable Karen O'Toole. I couldn't decide which adjective to go with. I was giving this some thought earlier, and I was thinking about the unsinkable Molly Brown from obviously a famous passenger on the RMS Titanic. And I thought that description fit you well, Karen. I hope you don't mind.
Unsinkable is good. I think that describes me well for anybody that knows me. Been through a lot. I'm coming back up. So yeah, I think unsinkable works. Yeah, I'll take it.
Somebody at an old place of business once called me unflappable, and I got I got a charge out of that, let's say.
Yeah, unflappable. Yeah, it's like a word of the day. You sign up for Has anybody else done this where like you sign up for like the word of the day, or like you follow on Instagram, or you sign up for the email that's like the word of the day, the poem of the day, and you're like, I am gonna improve my language skills. I'm gonna read more poetry. And then like a couple months later, you're like, why did I subscribe to this bull crap? It's cluttering my email account. So then you just end up deleting it, and you never read any poetry. You never enrich yourself intellectually. You move them out of the way to find like the Old Navy coupons, like promo codes. And you just continue to consume and obey, as most of us do here in the United States.
I'm the same way with foreign languages. There was a time when I was actively excuse me, I was actively learning Italian on Rosetta
Mhm.
Stone, and I think the furthest I got was just saying stupid baby
Ciao.
sentences like "La donna mangia en la cocina," like the woman eats in the kitchen. That's about the furthest I got.
I think
And
that's actually pretty impressive. I think
oh,
that's
sure.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, I I wish that I wish I had the stick to itiveness and the
yeah.
aptitude to really, because I feel like all it would take to learn, well, maybe not all it would take, but if you spent 15 minutes at least of every day on Rosetta Stone or Duolingo or one of those language apps, I feel like by the end of the year you would be able to follow simple conversations at the bare minimum. Maybe not speak fluently, but anyway, I would like to be bilingual one day, and that's still a goal of mine. I just need to have that discipline to actually sit down and look at it every day. Do you know any foreign languages, Karen? Klingon?
I wasn't even going to Klingon, I wish. No, I speak Elfish,
Oh,
Elvish,
okay.
from Lord of the Rings, J.R. Tolkien. Yeah, I wasn't gonna actually talk about it, but I did take Spanish for a number of years. And if I was dropped off in a Spanish country, I would pretty much be able to navigate. And I think within like I would say 3 months, I'd be able to, like, hold down a job and probably live, and, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, I just really enjoyed it and was, pretty proficient, and it's one of those things, like, if you don't use it, you lose it. So, like, when I went on my honeymoon to Costa Rica, like, we were in the taxi, and then all of a sudden, like, it was a 30-minute ride, and I had this complete conversation with the guy in Spanish, and I thought to myself, like, where did that come from? But you don't, like you said, you don't foster it. And I also really enjoyed German. I took that for years in high school also, and I think I would be okay. German, I'm not as strong as Spanish. Um, and then I took Arabic in college. So I love
So you know
languages, and it's
several languages, and you can fluently speak several
no,
languages
no, I
is
cannot
essentially what
fluently.
you're
No,
saying.
I'm not fluent in any of those languages. And I think a
Uh-huh.
lot of it has to do with immersing yourself in the language. And, I think that's just it's just a failing on my part. Like, that's just, you said a key word there was discipline. And that is something that I lack in spades, is discipline. So I've been trying to learn at the age of 32, because the kids have a word for this. It's called a try hard. I don't know if you've heard of like a try hard. And when I was a kid, like I hated those people that were like try hards, or like were disciplined. They had a routine. They woke up early.
They
They
were
did everything
annoying.
by the book. They were so annoying. But then, like, you get a little bit older and you find yourself getting up every morning, hitting the snooze button, making your coffee, and you're on your phone for like an hour. Like, somehow you find yourself on, like, Twin Flames subreddit, and you're like,
Well, you have to start off the morning with some healthy doom scrolling,
with some healthy
right?
doom scrolling. Yeah. So I've been trying so hard to break myself of that, because it got really, before I got sick and before COVID. So I think a lot of people can relate to this. I got really sick the same time that COVID happened, like January 2020. I was started to be home all the time, which is the same time everybody else was home. And I think they acted, there was like these freaks that like got their life, and like they did all these amazing things during COVID. They're like,
Oh, I
I
know.
finally,
I know. My
I
life
finally
changed very
have
little.
like, I finally have time to make sourdough bread. And I, built an entire woodshed in my backyard, and I now live off the land and I garden.
I'm a
And there's
cellist,
I
a
speak three
flautist.
languages now.
Is it flutist or flautist?
I just heard somebody who was a professional flute player say flutist the other day, and I thought it was flautist. But yet again, like, I'm not
It sounds like
not the
somebody who would
expert.
work at the dental office. Like, we got to bring in the flautist for this one. This is an in-depth procedure. Where's the flautist?
Yeah. So, but like I said, like, you had like these people that I consider freaks that were able to like accomplish so much. And like we all know those people. And let's be real, like most of us are not tryhards. And
Most of
I
America.
really most yeah, most of America is like my 600-pound life, or like, Love is Blind. Like, that's pretty much the country. Like, sometimes you wonder why the Islamists like hate us. Like, they turn on the television and like they're like watching my 600-pound life, and then it goes to like 90-day fiance, and they're like, yeah, no, we're not having these people come over here and teach us about democracy. Like, we'll be perfectly fine with our theocracy. We're good. We're not bringing these idiots in here. But and that's actually true, that like some of the most obese countries in the world, I this is what I like to do with my time. Instead of making sourdough bread, instead of getting back into speaking a foreign language, I decide to look up statistics. Okay. I decide whatever piques my curiosity is what I'm going to search. And so, yeah, I was looking up like the most obese countries, and the most obese country in like the world by like, by per capita is like Qatar, and I believe like Kuwait. And it's all these countries that America like had bases in. Like, my uncle was in the Air Force, and in the early 90s, he was like stationed in Kuwait. Well, they opened up like Domino's, Pizza Hut, McDonald's,
Ah,
the whole thing. And now they're like extreme. So you have like all these like wealthy Arabs and these like beautiful Arab women dressed from head to toe, like covered, and they're like very pretty, but like for not like Saudi Arabia where they're all black, like they like dress real, like they'll have like Nike and they'll have like Versace bags, and they're all like obese. And it's a very bizarre culture, I'm sure, if you go there. So I don't blame, like, can you imagine being Saddam Hussein and he's looking at Kuwait and he's like, that's what we're gonna be. We're going to be,
I'll be
although Saddam,
damned.
interesting fact about Saddam Hussein, his favorite snack, one of his favorite snacks, I'll never forget this, when he was imprisoned by somewhere, probably in Guantanamo, right? His favorite snack was Doritos. So
Now, was
that's
it the
that's what he
not
was
the
protecting.
classic nacho cheese or the Cool Ranch? Because that's an important distinction, I
Ooh,
feel.
um, hmm, I'm not sure. I think it was the classic, but maybe it was Cool Ranch, maybe it was Flamin' Hot. I'm not sure.
I
But
remember
yeah.
back in grade school, we used to have a snack time around 10 a.m. And we used to place an order every day for what snack we wanted. And you could get Doritos, Party Mix. I can't remember what else, but it was like 25 cents, 50 cents. and everybody placed their little snack order in the morning. And I just thought that that was kind of interesting that there was a designated snack time.
Well, I like that you bought them. That's because you didn't go to a Michelle Obama school. You went to a radical white supremacist Catholic school
That's
where you were
right.
allowed to have Doritos. Yeah, you would have been having
And
like
Funyuns.
in Fungus.
You ever have a
You know,
Funyun, Karen?
I'm not a fan. Not a
No.
fan.
They're
Sorry.
an
Yeah, definitely
acquired
more of a Doritos fan. But I do want to say I have an important news story to share. I would like everybody to like and subscribe and please share this podcast or this video
Oh yeah, we
with
should
somebody
probably
you
promote
know. Well, I have a reason for that. It's because I am sitting in my upstairs office in the sweltering heat here during the heat wave because I do not have central air. So the more people that like and subscribe, the more likely I don't have to suffer in these working conditions that Colin has subjected me to. So and I
well,
also want to
that the
mention
producer has subjected us both
the
to.
producer, yes. Shouldn't complain about sweltering heat to somebody that lives in Florida,
I was
but
going
I
to say
wanted to
don't talk to me
share.
about that, but
Well, a
I
lot of the country is going through this right now. But go ahead, go ahead.
no, I was going to say don't talk to me about sweltering heat, but I was unaware that you were basically Amish and didn't have central air.
Yes, it's like living in the 1700s. It's very difficult and it's just really it's almost embarrassing at this point in time, but I know that there's a lot of people listening that too share this severe way of life. Well, I don't know if you've seen this on Reddit or you've seen this on Twitter, but um I saw this, I don't know what you want to call this post going around where you could explain like something that you thought rich people had when you were growing up. So some people would be like a pool, an in-ground pool, Lunchables, or I would think I'm going to say
Lunchables.
central air. I think central air is like
I
up
love
there
how
now for
Lunchables were on
me.
that list. That's interesting.
I don't know if Lunchables was on that list, but I know for me, like Lunchables was like a treat. Like it wasn't something I was gonna have. Okay, I have a story to share.
Uh oh.
This I didn't think we were gonna go here with this, but
Well, we
you were
never know
talking
where
about
we're going to go.
snacks.
Let's be
Yeah, we never
honest.
know.
Who knows?
But I don't know if you have any stories like this where it's like you had some sense of like shame about being like it's not that like I did not grow up poor. Okay. I just want to make that known. My parents were young when they had us and they had 4 kids and they sent us to private school and they worked very, very hard. But they did not come from money and they kind of started behind the 8 ball. Like they didn't my mom got pregnant while she was in community college and like didn't get to complete. My dad dropped out of high school,
It
not because
happens.
he was just being a kid. He was kind of a stubborn punk kid. And so when I was in school, I went to a private school with a lot of people they were from like an affluent area outside of Philadelphia.
Like White Bear.
And like way there.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That was the first thing I thought of because when you live in the coal region, when somebody tells you they're from White Bear, automatically in your mind you start thinking, "Oh, you must have
You
some
must be Zipco money.
exactly. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I enjoy it. So did you ever as a kid bring in like cupcakes for your birth? Well, your birthday is in the summer, right? So I don't know if you ever did that, but kids would like
Yeah,
bring in
oh yeah,
cupcakes
yeah.
and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, my birthday's at the end of August. I'm a
So
Virgo. So
okay, all
I'm
right.
extremely
Well,
friendly and intelligent.
we we have birthdays coming up in August, actually. We're both August babies. I'm a Leo.
Look at
Um,
you.
so we should read our horoscopes at the end of the show.
Leos are very assertive. I know that. They're
Yes,
very
yeah.
hear me
We're
roar kind of personalities, I think. No?
yeah, I think that I don't know. It's weird though, because my sister is also a Leo, and I don't know if she's not exactly like me. We're a little different, but I would, yeah, I'm probably like, hear me roar. So, you know how you would like everybody would bring in their birthday cupcakes or whatever. So when I was in third grade, which was also the last time we talked about the Lisa Frank binder, third grade was like a very pivotal year in my story. So I really wanted to. So for some reason, the teacher was like, okay, for summer birthdays, we'll let you guys bring in cupcakes. You can bring in a treat on designated days. We'll give you a day to bring in, which is probably like hell for the parents. Like my mom was probably like, oh, thank God, what a relief. Like I don't have to do the birthday cupcakes for her.
Right.
Because she's an early August birthday. But the teacher was like, no, we're going to honor your birthdays. You get a day. And, say it was like March or something, or it was the end of the year, it was June. So I was really hell bent on having like a drink as part of like my birthday celebration.
Like
I don't
milk.
remember, not like milk. Like I wanted like little cartons of like juicy juice or like high C, like a little carton was what was in my
I
mind.
used to love the juicy juice cartons. You used to lift the little flaps up on the
Yes.
sides, right?
Yes. So I wanted like a little carton of juices for everyone in my class. I'm laughing how ridiculous.
It is pretty ridiculous.
So anyway, so I wanted these little cartons, and there was some kind of other treat as well. But my mom was like, "What? These drinks are so expensive. I'm not buying little cartons for 30 kids." So she so she got apple juice and put it in this like 1970s little drink dispenser and brought like little cups, and like
Little
I
Dixie
just
cups. It's
yeah,
kind
like
of a good
some kind,
idea,
they
actually.
probably weren't Dixie. They were probably like, store brand.
Yeah,
But they were in
sure.
this like
Plastic cups.
old school like push thing. It was like old and like like an off-white colored just like push um dispenser, and like you would push it and then like the liquid would come out,
Yeah,
and
I know what
you
you're
push on the
describing.
top, and it was probably like from a yard sale, and that's what I had to give to my class, and I remember being like mortified like that was,
Yeah, because
I
that's
was
not
like,
what you
I
had in
wanted,
mind. You had in
that's
mind
not,
a specific
no,
vision of passing out the
yes,
juicy juice cartons,
the juicy,
and Mrs.
yes, yeah,
O'Toole makes you haul in this 1970s retro cooler. Like I'm picturing a cooler that you would take to Knoebels Grove and set up under the pavilion.
yeah, it
Did you
wasn't
ever
like
do
a
that?
big cooler. Yes, I've been to Knoebels Grove. I don't know that I do know what the cooler you're thinking of, I think, is more of like what we would use for sports teams. This
Yeah,
was more of like not very big. Like I'm holding the cylinder. So imagine like a bigger one of these, more
that's horrifying.
like a percolator. Thank you. Thank you. I think this is like turned into a little bit of therapy for me. So yeah, so I was mortified that that was what I wanted. I must have seen somebody else in my class hand out juice boxes. Like I must have seen that and thought like the idea clicked in my brain, like I need to also hand out juice boxes. And then we lug this antique in, and apple juice is coming out of it. It's like a core memory. It's core. It's like I'm going raw here. This is really, it's like an open wound right now. But
And it's
it's okay.
triggering a lot of horrible memories in my
Triggering.
mind, by the way. Like I'm picturing my first grade teacher borderline bringing me to tears. I was a very sensitive child growing up, and we used to have what they called the communication envelope in grade school, where essentially we would deliver
To your
anything.
parents.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
any
Yeah.
messages, any goings on happening at the school, we would have to deliver it to our parents, and they would have to
Yeah.
sign off on it. And I
Mhm.
forgot to bring in my communication envelope, and I remember this. I was going to say the a bad name, let's say, but I'm going to refrain from that because I don't even know if she's still alive. But she brought me to tears basically because I forgot my communication envelope. And I remember her saying, now it's nothing to cry about. And like her saying that triggered the tears. I wasn't going to cry, but then I basically started to cry. And I have so many memories like that from grade school was not a pleasant experience. High school was not a pleasant experience. College was okay, I suppose. We shouldn't have gone to college though. We should have both learned trades, but that's a completely different that's a horse of a different color. But anyway, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to throw
Yes,
you
no,
off.
I think I believe like what we're really getting at though is that those are very important years, and you really do uh figure out a lot about yourself. And then you even I think like what I've realized recently, so I'm gonna be 33 next month, and I've it's taken me a long time, but I have a family member who also went to the same school that I went to when I was really young. And she is the same exact age as me. And she um was also not from a very like affluent area. And I'm saying like some of these people like really, really had a lot of money. Like it was a very like you had to pay to go to the school. There was a tuition, and there were people from certain areas of the county, which in that area where they just, they had more money than our families did. And so this person I know who is very similar situation to me, I've really seen it play out in her life. And I have to say, I feel like I always thought that I wasn't as affected as she was, because she's very, very concerned about her aesthetic, about her looks. Like everything's a label. She gets Botox, she gets all this stuff. Like her and her husband don't make, they don't have these crazy jobs and this crazy, like they're not,
They live above
they're,
their means.
they do well. Yeah, they do well, but like everything is very focused on like material wealth and like, and it's like you would almost think that she came from money, but
Do they
then it
listen to
really,
Andrew Tate?
yeah, yeah, you probably do.
They should
But
get into webcams.
so I saw it in her that I realized like, oh, like I don't look down. I think that some of the other people I know kind of think that she's like, oh, she's just all about this and all about that, all about like her aesthetic, and like she's ridiculous, like buying all these brands, spending all this money on clothes, getting Botox, getting plastic surgery. But I think for me, I can like empathize with her because we were in very similar situations. So it's occurred to me that no, a lot of that came from that childhood experience of being the poorer kid in this very affluent community, and kind of feeling a lot of inferiority about it. And like I said, I don't think I really understood until like the last year or so that actually kind of affected me a little bit too. I don't consider myself a very materialistic person. I don't really consider myself someone who worries a lot about like other people's, like I joke about things about, I'm always like joking that I don't have a door handle, and I'm not like embarrassed about it. Like I'm very sure of myself, but there is a part of me that does have that concern about like my aesthetic, like what people think of my success or what people or lack thereof. Or, like I just am a little bit more concerned than I like to admit. And I think a lot of that kind of is bred out of those childhood experiences and feeling that little bit of inferiority. But yeah, so I don't know if you can
I'm
relate.
laughing. I'm laughing because I was under the impression when I was growing up that we were rich, and it was probably the Disney trips every few years that did
Yes.
that. And I was always very fortunate growing up in that we had very not extravagant birthdays, but I got some pretty nice presents on my birthday and on Christmas. And all of that combined with not really being forced to do anything, which in retrospect I would probably make my child take the swimming lessons or um what have you, but I was forced to do so little that sort of was a detriment to me
Detriment.
as I got older. So no, I thought that we were really well off growing up, which we were fortunate. We were, middle class certainly, but absolutely not wealthy or rich by any stretch of the imagination. So it's funny how you realize when you get older what your true status was when you were growing up. And mine was very, we were very
You just
fortunate.
thought you were Richie rich. You're like, you're
Yeah,
just rolling into school like,
I
yeah,
thought
just
I was
throwing
Hunter
away
Biden
money.
essentially.
It was
I
like,
could my parents could take care of anything. My father's sitting right next to me. You better wire them. You better have that money wired, or else there's going to be big trouble for you.
yeah, exactly. So did you really, so you just thought that you, I guess, like just had money? Like you didn't, obviously, like, was there any part of you that understood that like you're not wealthy, but like you
I'm
just
not
thought
so
you were,
sure. I thought that we were very well off, and
yeah.
I never envisioned that I was going to have to work for a living or earn an income. And I also had this grand delusion that because I was a good guitar player, that somehow I was going to be a multimillionaire rock star without having to go out and play in bands or network or any of that. Because truly, and I tell you a bit about this off air candidly, I think I was always a good musician. I grew up, going to guitar lessons. I was always, and I say this without any air of oh what's the word I'm looking for, inflation, without a big head. I was always
Yes, yeah. Yeah, you're not, yeah. Yeah.
a better than average guitar player. But I never, I'd like to be in my room alone, left to my own devices.
Like
And
Lex Friedman.
I never wanted to play out. I can remember my parents, like, having an argument with my parents in I don't know, eighth grade, about not wanting to play guitar for mass, not wanting to play for the church, because I just wanted to be in my bedroom playing. I had no interest in being out or being in.
Performing.
Yeah, I just
It was about
enjoy.
the actual act of playing guitar,
Yeah.
not
I just
performing.
enjoyed
Yeah.
sitting on my bed with the cat. You notice there's always a cat involved with like my enjoyment of everything. There always has to be like a cat,
You're like my
snuggled
brother,
up.
John. He
Yeah.
loves the cats. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that there's a stereotype about us cat guys that is very, very unfair, shall I say. But what I'm trying to say here in a nutshell is that I had a lot of misconceptions about the real world and what life
Your
was truly.
stature in the world.
Right, my stature, my position in the world. And it was only embarrassingly fairly recently, in my late 20s, early 30s, that I started to truly understand how the world worked and really where I stood in the grand scheme of things. And I guess better late than never, right?
That I actually I guess it's kind of better to be mortified that you think you don't have money than it is
I don't
to be
know.
on the other, I opposite. Although it must have been nice to just think that like, oh, I'm set and we're good and I don't have to feel embarrassed about not having money or not having the right designer clothes or the right makeup. I understand for some, for high school. But
I used to get bare minerals. I used to have a collection of brushes because I was always very self-conscious about my complexion growing up. I always had a very
so you had other,
rosy
yes, yeah,
type of
yeah.
complexion, like sort of. I thought I had rosacea, but it was more of like a keratosis pilaris sort of thing that I had going on. So I would buy the bare minerals and I would put on my foundation before I went to high school, college. And it wasn't until, again, I feel like once you get into your early 30s. The 30s are really that's really the meaty part of the curve in life. The 20s are very overrated. They're not much fun at all, in my opinion. Like I said,
No.
high school wasn't fun. College really wasn't that much fun either.
Ugh,
I feel like I'm
drag.
starting to have, actually, let me backtrack. I don't think I'm having fun necessarily, but I'm starting to
Hot
appreciate
girl
life more.
summer. We're in our hot girl summer phase.
Right,
We're in
right.
our hot girl summer era, as the Swifties would say.
Right. We're drunk in the back of the car, crying like a baby coming home from the bar, as a famous bridge from one of the deepest songs ever written states. I'm
What's
joking.
what's the date? Is that one of her songs?
I think it's Cruel Summer, if I'm
Cruel.
not
Oh,
mistaken.
okay, okay. Is that the original Cruel Summer, or is that, does she have her own version of Cruel Summer, or if it's, is it the old Banana Rama version? Or
I don't know
that's
that
like an
one.
80s song. Cruel, cruel, cruel
I think
summer.
this is her Cruel Summer.
Oh,
And for I will say, we were talking about how her music is essentially created by an algorithm at this point. That little bridge in that song is very earwormy, if you will.
okay, okay. I'll give it a try. I always give, if something is catchy or I can see the appeal, I always give credit. I'm not afraid to say when something sounds
I
good.
mean,
I don't
it's
care if it's a pop
terrible.
song.
It's the
Yeah.
most basic. It's part of the collapse of Western
You just, okay,
civilization.
you just, I have a vision of you like driving around in Florida on your way to Disney World to go to Magic Kingdom, and you put the Bare Minerals on, and then you just drive and you sing Cruel Summer by Taylor Swift. Is that
I'm
like an
not.
accurate portrayal? No, no.
No, no, because I stopped the foundation a long time ago because
Okay.
it got a bit too tedious. I got
Yes.
to a point where I was just, screw it. Everybody else looks terrible too. So I'm just gonna
I
be
realized that
comfortable.
you wore more makeup in high school than I wore in high school. I didn't wear any
Probably.
makeup in high school. So you were, I should really go to you for makeup advice, because I have asked you about Bare Minerals because I've always wanted to try it. And you pretty much said it was a decent, just so for any of you ladies or gents that are listening, Collin is going to give the seal of approval for Bare Minerals if they'd like to sponsor the show. But that's what got him through his high school years. But
Yeah.
I think that what you were saying though about having, like, you had this inferiority, or this insecurity, I should say is a better word, about your, your acne, which a lot of people go through. So like mine was a little bit more
Oh no, not acne.
mortified.
I
Yeah.
want to
Oh,
clarify that.
keratosis.
This was not acne. This was
Not,
keratosis pilaris. It was like a rosy hue.
yes,
Now, do
yes.
you know that it's like a spot treatment makeup for acne that some people use? It looks like it's like a tan goop that comes in a little cylinder
I don't, yeah, I
with
don't
like a
know.
brush.
I don't know
Well,
about that.
in any case, this one kid who I went to high school with, who shall remain nameless, you could tell that he was applying this makeup to his face. Whereas with me doing the Bare Minerals, it sort of blended in, so nobody would have ever known unless they took a white pillowcase and smudged it up against my face, and then you would
Which,
see the.
that's actually going to be another, I would say that's another point for Bare Minerals, because the idea of wearing makeup, as I remember from the only Full House episode, besides when DJ doesn't eat for 3 days, that I remember, because I was not a Full House fan, but there's an episode where one of them is like wearing too much makeup. And then the pretty lady that like lives upstairs with Uncle Jesse, she like shows her how to apply makeup. And she's like the
Aunt
idea
Becky.
of Aunt Becky. Yeah,
I
Aunt
loved
Becky
Aunt
is
Becky.
like, she is beautiful. She is beautiful. Didn't she try to get her daughter into college? Like, wasn't she part of that
Oh
scandal?
yeah, yeah, yeah. She was
Yeah.
involved in that scandal. I forget the name of the actress. I know my cousin's
Yeah.
listening to this, shouting out the name
She'll
right
know the
now.
name. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
So
she'll know
Aunt
the name. Yeah.
Becky just goes ahead and she says, the idea of makeup is to look as if you're not wearing any at all. So you
That's
are
right.
killing it with the Bare Minerals.
Makeup game
Clearly.
was on point in high
1
school, let me
point.
tell you. And
Yes.
I had 0 dates. I also want to tell
Yes.
you that too.
I wore no makeup and I had 0 dates too. So, I mean,
Well, that's good.
you're kind of screwed no matter what you do. That's high school, good luck, and look at where you get. You have no
I mean, you
no
have no
handle.
doorknob. You have no freaking doorknob. That's where it gets you.
That's where you guys have to look forward to.
Oh my God.
But you hit on an important topic though, that I think is something that a lot of people can relate to. And I know that like you and I always go into this and we're like ready to talk about all these different things. And then we talk about
The
something
issues of the
completely
day.
different. Yes. Yes. Yeah. We were supposed to talk about aliens, the heat wave, Hillary Clinton blaming the heat wave on MAGA
Oh,
Republicans.
oh, we're still
But
going to talk about aliens.
okay, we're still going to talk about aliens, but you mentioned something that I think a lot of people can relate to about how not until really like your late 20s did you really realize like the real true nature of the world. And I think that's why people kind of are enjoying their 30s a little bit more in the millennial generation, because I feel like we grew up, and this has been talked about so ad nauseum, but we grew up truly just being told, pursue what you want to do. Everything will be laid out before you, and you'll have no problems. I was just listening to an interview with a lady who was a copywriter, and she was like making 6 figures as a copywriter for like VH1 or like Nick at Night, but she was
I
much
love
older.
Nick
She
at
was like
Night
a
growing
Gen
up. Oh,
well, she was writing a lot for them. They were very good, but she was making 6 figures and basically like fell into the job. Like every job she just fell into, she got fired from. Like she just like basically did nothing to get her job. And she was like Gen X. And I'm listening to her talk, and she like was living in New York and making really good money into this job. Like all these jobs she never even really worked hard to get to. And then there's our generation where you just pursue your dreams and take on all these student loans, and then you get out of school and you just get to be an intern for 8 years until you can make a living wage. And
we were
so I
fed a
think
bill of goods.
yes, yes, so I think like you're saying, I think it took a lot of us a while. Like if you're not a trust fund kid, if you're not a kid that your parents were really, for myself, I was like a first generation college student. I mean, yes, my mom went to community college for a little bit. My grandfather went to Temple for a little bit on the GI Bill, but nobody like actually graduated. No one really knew how to navigate that part of your life. I remember my mom looking about at my college, like all the financial aid stuff and, just like the finances, but the tuition. And I remember her saying like, this is crazy. Like, how are people affording this? Like how she was like waking up to this whole student loan crisis. And fortunately, I didn't get saddled with too many student loans. I mean, yes, I did. They were tens of thousands of dollars. And I paid them off shortly after I got married.
Good for
But
you. I'm still holding out hope for Sleepy Joe. I'm waiting for him to pick up the tab. He said he's still going to. He's going to ignore the
okay.
Supreme Court, so he's going to
But
have to do
yeah,
that
I
because they're
think
not getting my
that's
money.
yeah, so many kids in our generation, um, a lot of us were not taught to pursue wealth. We were taught to pursue our passions, and then realize we were pursuing our passions and all along not getting anywhere. And then you kind of wake up one day and you're like, okay, that was a lie. We were really supposed to pursue wealth. Like
And you know
we had
what?
it all wrong. Gordon Gecko, greed is good.
Yeah, and not even really pursuing our passions necessarily in many cases. In a lot of cases, it was just listen. Here's what you got to do in order to get a nice cushy job and have a nice house with a white picket fence and have a nice
Yeah.
comfortable cushy life. You've got to go to college. Now, it doesn't necessarily matter what you major in, what you go to college for. At the end of the day, you just need to have that piece of paper, that 4-year degree that says, hey, look at me. I rose to the upper echelons of the education system, and this is I should be paid a lot of money. We were told that this piece of paper was going to get us a nice, comfortable, cushy life. And another part of the whole scam was it was always reinforced that the Votech kids, the shop kids, oh, they're the dumb kids. They're the dumb
Yes.
kids who are too stupid to go to
Hmm.
college. You're smart. You're better than them. You're doing the smart thing by going to university. What a load of you know what that was. Am I right?
Absolutely. And I will say that, like, obviously school has its place. And I think that the problem is that school has been so corroded. And I remember being in college and being like shocked that people would cheat on their exams. Like, I thought when I went to college, like everybody was going to be a little bit more highbrow. Like, we were going to really be there for like intellectual pursuits. And I realized, like, oh no, it's just like high school 2.0, except for I have to pay to be here, which was terrible. And I was not a big college fan whatsoever. I mean, I had some good times, but I really hated it. I remember every day I thought, I'm paying to be here. I can't wait for me to get paid to be somewhere. Completely turn this around. And I was like ready to start working, and like I did internships and I loved it. I would get on the train at like 6 a.m., go down the city, get to my internship, work that all day. I loved that part of my college experience. And then the next day, I would get on the train at 6 a.m., go to college and dread it. It was like just such, and I have to say, like, I actually would, I understand now, like, I think I would have enjoyed it a little bit more if I would have, had some discipline, like we've discussed. But yeah, it just, like you said, and then you think to yourself too, like this whole generation, you're gonna start your early 20s with tens of thousands, some hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, and good luck succeeding. And I think like a lot of people finally got to the point where they were like actually getting ahead, or they finally figured it out. Like, okay, I have to just make money. Like I can't just keep like working at Starbucks and like trying to be a graphic designer. Like I'm going to get a real job. I'm going to get a big girl job. And finally they make some headway on their student loans, and maybe they get married and they're like, you know what, I'm going to buy a house. And then the housing prices go through the roof. And yeah, I really feel there's a lot of things for me that are not exactly the same as the regular millennial financial journey. But I completely empathize with a lot of people in my generation. But I think that, like you were saying, I think why a lot of us in our generation are kind of enjoying our 30s more is because we finally like woke up and realized, like, okay, these are actually the things they were giving us. They were feeding us so many lies, and it took us all these years to finally find the right path that actually would lead us to the life we want. And I'm not saying that you have like the exact path. Don't get me wrong. You never have the exact path. Like where
No.
life is going to, or at least like you have the tools or the perspective. Whereas when you were younger, you were just like, I'm trying to make this work, but I did all the things they told me to do, but none of these things are actually parlaying into what they told me would be my life. And I think like you get a little bit older and you start to look around and you get a little wisdom and you're like, oh, like money is actually what lets me pursue my passions. Like maybe as one of my favorite YouTube channels, shout out to Alux, they always say you have to figure out money. Like you have to figure out money. It's the way we move throughout the world.
Start a
And
webcam business.
yes, start a
That's how
webcam business.
you make your millions.
Start putting your feet online. If you can't start the business, utilize the business. And I don't mean it like that, but I just mean like you have to kind of figure out money. And that looks in a lot of ways like figuring out how to pay off your debt, figuring out how to make sacrifices, doing those things. Because as they also said, one of my favorite quotes is, money doesn't buy you happiness, but being broke's never bought you anything. It doesn't buy anything. And that's the truth. Like, yeah, that's great to, it's not necessarily that money's going to make you happy. I know someone very well who is the wealthiest person I know, and also simultaneously the most miserable person I know. So I know
Funny
full
how that
well,
works out sometimes, huh?
yes, yeah. So money is not going to make you happy, but I think a lot of us have realized, like, wait a minute, like I need to readjust my plan. I need to kind of start, and you feel like you're making progress for the first time in your life, whereas your 20s, you had all the student debt. You didn't pay $500 a semester and then graduate and move to Manhattan and live in this great apartment and get a job at Vogue making 60 grand a year. Like that didn't happen for like anybody. So yeah, I think that that's why people are kind of I don't know, I wanted to go on this little tangent about, I think, something that a lot of us can relate to.
I think that's no, I think that's important that you went off on that little tangent because when you mentioned Manhattan, it really triggered something in me as
Oh, you were a
early.
Manhattan boy.
Oh yeah,
Oh, go
and
ahead.
and as early as 2014, which really wasn't that long ago. I mean, I guess it was. It's going to be a decade ago next year that I did an internship in Manhattan. But even at that point in my life, I still had these delusions of grandeur that somehow I was going to be able to land some sort of fancy radio job in Manhattan. And I remember meeting with one of the guys who worked at Sirius XM, and I was kind of telling him my plans. And I'll never forget, he said to me, "Oh, you want to start out in Manhattan?" Like, in other words, like, kid, you've got to be kidding me. You think you're going to start out in radio in Manhattan? And in my mind, I was thinking,
Of
I
course.
already paid my dues working in local radio, doing the Dutch Trader. Um, I already paid my dues. Like, yeah, I'm gonna be the afternoon drive guy in a major market in New York somewhere. But needless to say, my Manhattan tenure ended when the internship ended because I could not find any sort of meaningful work in New York City. So I had to come home for a while until I found work elsewhere. And as fate would have it, now I'm in Florida 9 years later. But yeah, it takes for some of us, it takes a little bit longer to kind of realize how things are, shall we say, and that money really is what makes the world go round, and it really is what drives most humans. But at the end of the day, I think that we all bleed the same blood, and we're not going to be able to take it with us when we leave this when we depart this mortal coil of ours. And then that makes me start thinking about how brief of an experience this is, and I'm talking about the human experience.
You're just
It
going through an existential crisis now.
Well, my mind travels from place to place, and I think that this is going to lead us into aliens a little bit because
Yeah. Okay.
we really
Yeah.
have to talk about this
We
whole.
do. We do. We got off on this whole like millennial thing, but yeah,
Well, it was very cathartic for both of us, I think.
it was, yeah. I don't pay for therapy. Colin and I just jump on this once a week,
This is
and
our therapy.
this is my therapy. But just came out today, this article. Well, actually, I believe it was yesterday that these comments were made. An ex-Air Force intel officer. Finally, we're getting to the news. Like that's where we're at. If anybody was wondering, there's no point here. If anybody was wondering, this is like Seinfeld. If you haven't
This is the
mentioned,
show.
yeah, this
This
is
is it.
just, it's a show about nothing. Okay. so,
Sorry.
so like and subscribe. As the kids say, the hype beast. So an ex-Air Force intel officer said non-human were collected from crashed crafts. And so what he said is, a witness testified to Congress. If you're not aware, if you're trying to live your life, you're trying to make money, you're trying to hustle, you're trying to get a side hustle going,
Oh,
you're
I hate
trying to
that word,
crush
by the way.
it.
Hustle.
It is
Whenever.
disgusting. Yeah.
Oh, please stop. It's
He's a
so gross.
hustle. I'm going to say it
Hustle.
again.
Oh no, I'm not
Like if
hustling anywhere.
you're too busy hustling or going to the Eras concert, You might not have known that Congress is having hearings right now on UFO intelligence. One of the people, I don't know if he's really involved with this as much, but I do think it's interesting that Marco Rubio is like one at the forefront of like all of the UFO investigations. He's
Little
like,
Marco.
I'm not going to become president. I might as well figure out about the aliens. So this witness testified to Congress that new non-human material had been collected from crashed craft in a stunning moment during a House Oversight Committee hearing Wednesday on identified phenomena. Okay. So then, when asked by Rep. Nancy Mace, so if the pilots of a crashed craft were recovered, the witness, David Grush, who is a former former Air Force intelligence officer who had studied the UAPs, responded, as I've stated publicly, biologics came with some of these recoveries. When Mace asked if these biologics were human or non-human, Rush responded, non-human. That was the assessment of people with direct knowledge of the program I talked to that are currently still on the program. And so this Grush guy, he served as an intelligence officer for 14 years, both in the U.S. Air Force, as he was a rank of major and a civilian at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. That was from 2021 to this year at the equivalent rank of colonel. He also was his agency's co-lead in UAP and transmedium object analysis, and as well as reporting to the UAP task force and eventually the all domain anomaly resolution office. So he also he like filed whistleblower status to kind of uncover some of the stuff that was going on. And he, I think, was actually kind of shut out of some of the information when he was working for the government.
I'm sure it's all very compartmentalized, like everything in
Yes.
government.
Yeah. Yeah. So he was shut out from some of it, but obviously he knew a little bit about this. Um, I don't know. This is completely just a hot take, but when I see this guy, he just doesn't, there's something like shisty looking about him. And I really hate to say that, but like there's always like bizarre things about these people. Like Bob Lazar, I'm sure you've heard of Bob Lazar.
I love
And
Bob, and I believe him 100%.
there's parts of me that doesn't think that he's a liar, but there's always like weird things that come out about these people. Like Bob Lazar has a lot of strange skeletons in his closet and has tried to do a lot of oddball things over the years. So that kind of like undermines his integrity. I'm not saying this is of David Crush. There's nothing that's come out. That was just my hot take from looking at pictures of him. Like this comes from
Rush
like,
seems very
yeah.
government planty to me,
Yes,
where
yeah.
Bob, anytime I listened to Bob's story, which by the way was consistent in the 30 years or however long he's been reluctantly telling this story, it's always been the same story. And he never really had to think too much about it. If you go back and you listen to the interviews that he gave with Art Bell on Coast to Coast AM, dating back to 1992. I really encourage everyone to go check out the Coast to Coast AM episode where Art Bell had Bob Lazar and John Lear, who was the son of the guy who invented the Learjet, another fascinating guy, John Lear. But they really go into all this back in 1992. And anyway, Bob, to me, he was always able to really back up everything that he was saying. I mean, so much of what he said in those early interviews came to fruition later on, like the way he would describe these craft and the anti-gravity propulsion system, or I guess lack of propulsion system that these craft allegedly have. Commander David Fravor, when he came forward and described what he saw, the surreal movements that these craft were doing, Bob described all of that exactly how this serious, no nonsense military guy described it in modern times. So I can understand why people would discredit his story, but to me, nothing. see, the thing about Bob is his entire thing was concerning the technology. He said flat out, he really doesn't care that there's aliens or another civilization. The whole thing to him is, wow, we have this technology that could literally change everything about our existence. If you can create anti-gravity, then you win.
Yeah.
Basically, you win the game. If a country, because the implications of that are you can create essentially force fields around jets that cannot be penetrated. But anyway, go check out that Coast to Coast episode with Bob Lazar. But this Grush guy, it seems like they kind of they instructed him to. He seems like a fake whistleblower, is what I'm trying to say
Yes.
in
Yeah.
many words. He doesn't
Yeah.
seem
And I
authentic.
want to say about Bob Lazar, I don't think that I I watched the Showtime documentary that included him. I can't remember exactly what it was called. But I kind of, as I came through it, I started to kind of research a little bit more. And with Bob Lazar, I didn't necessarily think that some of the claims he made were not true. I think some of the claims he made about himself were where things got problematic. And that again, then like I think he um kind of misrepresented his real influence and his stature
You
in the
think so?
situation. Yes, I do. I do think that he did.
Anything
Yeah, yeah.
specifically that you
I
that
think that he was not as like high brass as he claimed to be, or as like educate. Like if you, they looked into like his some of his records and stuff, and like I
well,
mean,
they deleted
unless
them,
the
Karen.
guy, well, yeah, that's, I mean, some people choose to believe that, but like there's things that about it that I think he, in some ways, and like I said, I think that that kind of undermines the veracity of his comments, because he's a little questionable what he's claiming about himself. But I do think that there is a very true likelihood, a very clear cut likelihood that he might have been telling the truth about what he saw. I don't think what he saw wasn't true. I just think what he said about himself might not have been true.
He never. Well, one thing that I want to stress about Bob is that I
Uh-oh,
think
big
that there.
Bob fan. Sorry.
I am, and you kind of struck a bit of a nerve here because I
Uh-oh.
really no, I'm joking. No, in all seriousness, I could understand why some people would find Bob's tale a bit questionable, especially as it pertains to his credentials. But really, at the end of the day, all he said was that he worked at Area S4, which is a subsidiary of Area 51. And his job with his lab partner was to try and figure out the propulsion system of this craft. And he described how everything was very compartmentalized and you weren't allowed to talk. Like his team, him and his lab partner weren't allowed to converse with the guys who were trying to figure out the weapons implications of these crafts, which he always said is not how science works. Science is all about free flowing communication. So that's where he feels they kind of always ran into a brick wall. But one thing I will say, and this is 100%, nobody can dispute this, that Bob Lazar 100% worked at Los Alamos Laboratories in New Mexico, which is where they test nuclear weapons and all that. He was in the phone book, in the Los Alamos phone book. He was able to give Las Vegas investigator George Knapp a tour of the place. George Knapp even called the headhunting organization that hired Bob, that got Bob the job at Los Alamos, and they said they were going to send him all the stuff in the mail. Now this is George Knapp, the investigator. He's
Yes, yeah.
talking to the headhunting organization. They say, "Oh yeah, Bob Lazar. Yeah, we worked with him. We got him the job at Los Alamos. Yeah, we'll send you all the documentation." Weeks go by, nothing. George Knapp's trying to contact this organization to say, "Hey, what's up? Where's the stuff?" And long story short, they said, "Actually, no, but we have no record of Bob Lazar. We don't know who he is." Like, so somebody
So
obvious.
maybe, yeah, so maybe Bob really, was educated where he said he was educated, and there might be, more to the story. Maybe he really was they were trying to silence him.
And the whole
So,
MIT thing, by the way, I think that's where a lot of people always say, oh, well, there's no record of him going to MIT. He never went to MIT. The way he explained it is it wasn't so important that he went. See, this is while he was working at Los Alamos on whatever project he was working to. They sent him to MIT to learn something that was specific to this project. So it wasn't so important that he got a paper degree that he could show off. What was important was the
more like
information
research.
he was
Yeah.
gathering while he was there. So that
Which we will see. Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, we've seen, I mean, MK Ultra existed in public universities, and
yeah.
there's, and private universities. So, I mean, there's a lot that we might not know. The truth is out there, right?
But he never claimed at any point that he saw aliens or he flew around in flying saucers with little green men. He said that he saw one test flight where essentially the craft just lifted off the ground. It didn't do any fancy movements. And what got him in trouble was once they stopped calling him in. I know I'm going off on a whole. I'm like,
No, that's okay. I'm like Scully and you're Mulder. I'm here to like see what's going on. I'm here to figure it out. So
basically,
you're like, it is true.
They took. Well, I do really
No,
believe
that's okay.
Bob.
You're very, yes, yeah.
I just there's just something in my gut that tells me that what he is saying is the truth, because why would anybody go out of their way to make their life more difficult, and why would they want to be harassed by the government? And
Yeah.
anyway, what bugs me
Because
about
he wanted
this,
to hang out with the prostitutes in like Reno. Didn't he get in trouble for something with this?
no, that he explained all that on an episode of Coast to Coast. Brothels are
Okay.
legal out in Pahrump, Nevada, and an owner of a brothel wanted him to set up their, I don't know what they were asking him to set
Well,
up.
I think he also went like bankrupt shortly before either he went public or before he started working there. But like you said, like if you went bankrupt, like why would you want to put yourself out there? But also maybe
We have
you're
to get Bob on
crazy.
this podcast.
We need to
We
get
really
Bob
do.
on to, yeah, I've got a lot of questions for Bob. Bob, you need to come on the show. And that's, that's where it is. There was somebody else you mentioned earlier that I thought we should get on the show. I'm trying to remember who it was. There's something we mentioned earlier at the beginning of the show. I can't remember.
We should get Candace Cameron Burr on this podcast, DJ from Full House, just because I want to talk to her.
Just because
I think she'd be like the perfect wife.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. She's very beautiful. She's very beautiful. So
she's very traditional.
yes. Yeah. And she did. I just, I do remember when she didn't eat for 3 days. That's like the number one episode. I didn't really watch Full House. But as we're learning on this, like there's a lot of things about me that are very basic, but I feel like there's a lot of things that are not, like I did not grow up doing that were kind of part of like millennial canon. And one of them was watching Full House. That was not, my cousins watched Full House, but I did not. We did not partake in the O'Toole household.
So needless to say, you didn't see the reboot on Netflix, Fuller House. You were not you did not partake in that.
No, I was not. I heard that fans of the show were disappointed though.
I didn't watch up until the end, but for the most part, I was entertained for what it was worth. But we need to wrap up this whole.
Yes, we need to go back on Bob
here.
Lazar. We're on Full House. Yeah.
Here's my whole thing. This whole disclosure, this UFO disclosure that's happening right now, it all at its core, it just seems very contrived and very distraction-esque. And I always go back to this. Okay, so the government is admitting that there's UFOs, UAPs, extraterrestrials. okay, how about somebody who works at Area 51 or Area S4 or wherever they store these craft? Get an iPhone, do a little tour, take a video, say, "Hey everybody, here's the craft. Here's the anti-gravity, show the craft lifting off the ground without a propulsion system. Give us a snapshot of one of the creatures." How in the hell is that going to jeopardize national security? Like is somebody, like, if they did that and uploaded the video to YouTube, would somebody in Russia be watching and be like, "Oh, I see what they did there. I cracked the code. Here's how we create this anti-gravity." Like, no, nobody's ever going to be able to figure this stuff out. This is, well, according to Bob, this is not thousands, but hundreds of years into the future. We're not going to be able to replicate this technology in our lifetimes, but maybe 200, 300 years we'll be able to crack the code. But anyway, can we have a picture, a video, anything? No? Why not?
Because they'll kill them if they release it. But it's kind of surprising that somebody hasn't just gone on a Discord server and released something like, you saw that kid a couple months ago, the Pentagon leaker. You would think
Yes.
that somebody would just, some 18-year-old kid would just be like leaking it. But like I said, things might be under wrap, and they might. I don't know. I don't work in intelligence. I never have. I'm not close to it. I don't even begin to understand it. So
Are you a believer, though, in extraterrestrials and these type of anti-gravity craft?
I am a believer that these crafts exist. I'm a believer that there are other beings in the universe, but I fall in line more that it's like they're like multidimensional beings, and they're not necessarily extraterrestrial beings. Like they're more
Okay.
likely, which I guess they could be extraterrestrial, but I don't think that they're like living this other civilization um, that is separate from ours. And I just believe that, yeah, I think that they're likely like demons or angel. Like I believe in angels and demons, and they're in there. We know there's multiple dimensions. So yeah, that's kind of my take on it.
Do
Is
you do
my
you think
worldview.
I think it's definitely possible that they're interdimensional. I think that a lot of people don't want to say that they're from another planet or they're another civilization because it somehow conflicts with their religion, which I can sort of understand. But to me, as somebody who believes in God and Jesus, I believe that some of them do come from other planets in our infinite universe. And to me, it doesn't conflict with anything that I believe about humans or God, or like where it doesn't say anywhere in the Bible that God, or did Jesus say anything about UFO? Was there a UFO sermon on the Mount
On
at
the
all
mount? No, I
at
don't
any
think so.
point? I feel like there
No.
had to have been.
No, I don't necessarily think so. I don't think
Huh.
that he said something explicitly, but maybe something that could be interpreted to say
I think we should
something.
look into that.
Yeah, next time. Next time.
Anything else you would like to add about your thoughts as a whole on the is this a psyop is what I'm asking you essentially.
Yeah, why wouldn't it be? Like, why would they at this time? Clearly, they don't want this information out there. So why all this hoopla around, all this noise going on right now? Uh, whether it's to just cause more chaos, whether it's just to distract us. I agree that I think it's funny. I feel like I saw a meme earlier today. Is that kind of like the general consensus of most people that are in this space? Like that they feel like this is not the real deal.
I think that there are people who are unsure, that are kind of like half and half, like this could be a psyop, this is a distraction, but also maybe this is for real. There's other people who dismiss it as BS entirely. I'm kind of in the camp of I believe Bob Lazar. I believe that there are people like him who have worked on these craft. I believe these craft do exist. I believe that there is a whole other civilization out there in our universe that we are unaware of. However, the current disclosure, I think, is a distraction from the real problems that are looming down on us currently as a country, as a species. Um, and I don't think that they want people focused on anything that is within their grasp to change, which I think
Yeah.
there's more in our grasp to change than we give ourselves credit for, and they
Mhm.
don't the global elites don't want us to be aware of that. So hey, look,
Yes,
there's
yeah.
aliens.
There's aliens, the earth is on fire because of the MAGA Republicans, and yeah, that's where we're at. Yeah, exactly. Like they're giving us more and more existential crises so that we feel less and less any ability to make any change, and we kind of are have our hands tied. Yeah, I think that that's a good. Yeah, like you think about it. Oh, you have a pandemic that you can't do anything. All you can do is wear a mask and stay in your house. There's climate change, and all you can do is not have a hot water heater or gas stove or a car. That's all you can do about it. And now there's aliens, and all you can do about that is, well, absolutely nothing. So yeah, kind of like handcuffs us and makes us kind of forfeit more control, more control. Yeah.
Well, Karen, I think on that note, this is a good point to kind of wrap things up. This has been a very interesting episode of ReEducation Camp. We talked about your juice boxes in grade school. We talked about me crying over the communication envelope. We gave our listeners some makeup tips, bare minerals, UFOs, all the essential
Essentials, yeah.
things that would more than likely come up. Oh, one last thing I wanted to mention: I beat Pokemon Red the other day.
Congratulations.
Yeah, maybe this was the third time that
I was
I
gonna ask if this was the first time you beat it. No, it's the third.
second or third time, I think. Although I will say this was my best Pokemon lineup by far that I ever had. I had a Venusaur, a Mew, I had a
A
Raichu,
Mew.
which I evolved from the Thunderstone. I caught 2 out of 3 of the legendary birds. I got Moltres, and I didn't get Zapdos. I did get Articuno in the cave, and I was able to really just breeze through all the gym leaders. Gary was a piece of cake. So now there's not really much left. See, after you beat the gym leaders and defeat Gary, you can go in the cave in Cerulean City and catch Mewtwo if you want, but there's nobody left to battle with, really. So I think what I'm going to do now is move on to Pokemon Gold. I have to find a copy of that somewhere on eBay that has a working save battery. And the cool thing about that one is you set the time of day. So like if you go to play that at 9 p.m.,
Night?
it's
Is it
dark out
nighttime?
in
It's
the
dark
game.
out in the
Yeah,
game.
that was super revolutionary for the time. I remember being blown away as a kid. So I'm going to move on to Pokemon Gold. I'm an adult, by the way. I'm going to be 34 this year. I'm still single, but
I like that you're crushing your goals, and I think that that's what, you should be supported in. You should be celebrated for crushing your goals, moving on to the next thing, and heading into this next evolution as you go to Pokemon Gold.
yeah, absolutely. And there's 2 more legendary birds to catch in this one. There's the legendary dogs. I mean, there's so much fun ahead of me with Pokemon Gold, playing in my guest room on my Super Game Boy. But yeah, there you have it. I am a catch and a half. But in all seriousness, Karen, it has been a pleasure. And we're going to wrap things up here. Please subscribe to us on Rumble, follow us on Twitter, and we'll see you right here once again next week for more fun on the ReEducation Camp.